Hey, YouTube, how is it going? I hope all is well. Happy New Year's! Yay! I'm still alive. I have been a busy boy, as you can probably see. I apologize. I'm going to try to shoot this with a steady cam. I don't know how well it's going to work. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me through all of this. I just want to say thank you. I hope you all had wonderful holidays. I know that I have lied once again and creating videos and content for you guys, but I just want you to know I have been a very, very busy boy. This guy here you've probably seen in one of my other videos, but this guy here, I don't think you have. Maybe you've heard me mention it, but there might have been a shot in a video of it. And then this guy here, I know you haven't seen. This one is very much brand new. I've only been working on it the last few months. So I'm just going to kind of give you a quick rundown of each of these things, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this one because this one kind of upsets me a bit. More on that in a minute though. So this guy here, again, bear with me here as I try to operate two sides of my brain at the same time. So this guy here is obviously, like an AC30 kind of vibe going for it, right? For EL84s, it's got a GZ34. What I'm doing a little bit different for this design is that I'm using an EF86 directly into a phase inverter. So this is only a single channel amp, but it is an EF86 preamp going straight into the phase inverter. This is not like an AC30 or any kind of Vox. This is not like a train wreck, although it has a lot of attributes of both of those types of things going for it. I'm going with a slightly lower voltage on the power transformer. That's kind of a thing that I prefer to do. I think it's a good idea. I like tube rectification, so again, we're going with GZ34 in this case. This is a train wreck style of output transformer. And you would think, just based off of that right there, that this would be a la, train wreck Liverpool. I can tell you right now the differences are far and few between in the two. Yes, it has a similar output transformer, but the voltages are a little bit lower, and the power section is a little bit different. I kind of have my own thing going on. Going back to kind of like a matchless DC30 where they have the EF86 channel. Yes, they do have somewhat of a similar topology than this, but very, very different amps. I can tell you that right now. This thing does the thing. It is very unique. It kind of does the AC30-ish sort of thing, but it has its own kind of thing going on. Very chewy. It feels amazing under the fingers. This one's a very cool amp. It can kind of do the clean thing. If you're using hot pickups or hotter humbucker pickups, this one doesn't do quite as well. And that's mainly because it's got the EF86, input channel, so it's prone to breaking up a little bit earlier. But with single coils, this thing cannot be beaten, I don't think. We'll expose this one a little bit more, but I'm calling this one done. We're going to skip this guy for a moment. We're going to go on to this boy here, or girl, whatever you want to call it. So this guy here, let me switch. This thing here kind of started life as a train wreck express. Makes sense. It's got a GZ34 tube rectifier, two EL34s for the power section, and then of course a pretty standard kind of input thing. It's got a cascaded gain stage thing. That is a first for me. That is not something I typically do. Let's see if I can get this thing to come around, and if you wouldn't mind, thank you. So this one is a little bit of a breakaway from what I normally do. I don't really like fixed bias amps, and I don't really like negative feedback loops in fixed bias amps. So all of my other amp designs are cathode biased. This is my first fixed bias negative feedback design, so I do have a presence control in there. I'm not quite happy with this one yet. It's very close. It is very different from a train wreck. The only thing it shares probably in common is part of the topology in the output section and the fact that it has an output transformer that is similar. Input thing, the input stages is all my own. As you may already know, I kind of have my own little thing going on for the preamp where I use a parallel triode. Well, I have a parallel triode in this thing here that runs into what is essentially going to end up being another parallel triode. We're on the fence about that. I don't know for sure if that's the way I'm going to go. Maybe we'll kind of do like a top boost sort of thing, but right now, I like what this is doing when it is cranked. And like many train wreck, get over here. Like many train wrecks, it has like this spot, this range. Like train wrecks don't really do the cleanest of clean, like beautiful clean thing, and they don't do very well when you dime everything. Like they just get kind of splatty and a little too oversaturated. Same with this one here. It's kind of got this magic spot where it really likes to be. The problem is it's really freaking loud, even with the master volume. I haven't mastered how I want this thing to all come together, but this thing, when it's cranked at the moment, if you just dime it, I have it dialed exactly where I'd like it to stay. Now I'm trying to work on reeling it in so that it does the nice cleans and still has the growl and the grit and the grind and all that stuff when it's dimed out, but still has a master volume so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. I like amps that have the feel. They got to have the right feel under the fingers, and they got to sound good. This one, it sounds great, but it only does it in one spot or the other. It doesn't do kind of all of them yet. We're working on getting them all. So, and yeah, I haven't changed much. I'm still drinking the Fosters. So now this guy, how do you explain it? Frustrating. So Mark Sampson and Bad Cat Amps started working together again, and they recently just released a new amplifier called the Era 30. What does this thing have to do with the Era 30? I've been working on this for at least, it's something I had in my mind for probably a good last year or so, or at least a year or so, and I started working on this about 8 months ago or so, 6 to 8 months, thereabouts. And the concept ended up being that it was going to be a parallel channel amp. So it has two independent preamps, and each one has their own volume control, but they run in parallel to the power section. This has a big old beefy power transformer, again slightly lower voltage than is typical. Cathode biased 6L6s at the moment. Right now that's kind of where I want it to be, and that might be where I get it to stay. And then of course the GZ34-2 rectifier. I did end up going with the choke on this one. I don't usually like using a choke if I don't have to. They're just a little expensive for what they do, but noise usually isn't an issue. But in either case, I went with a choke because I wanted to maintain the voltage to the preamps, or the preamp tubes. This one is unique in a way as it has my parallel triode input stage and an EF86. What do you know? That's very similar to the Era 30 that just came out. The only thing that's different with the Era 30 is it's basically a DC30, more or less a DC30. I think they went with 4 EL84s. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the way they went. And then, of course, a similar topology in the front end. They're using two 12AX7s in the front end, one of which is being used as a gain stage and a cathode follower. I'm 99.99% positive that Mark did his typical parallel triode thing for that 12AX7 channel, which is normally what he does in a lot of his matchless designed amps. I like that kind of idea, so I do run with it in my own design. I have a variation of it. It's not the same in many regards, but in either case, mine is always in parallel. Mine doesn't have a switch for either channel and I don't have, there's not a blend knob to blend between the two. Basically, they're both on all the time, and you blend in which one you want. Now, I did catch a little bit of flack from a couple of friends that I've had take this amp away from me. They're like, how could you make a really cool amp like this that sounds good on either channel, but doesn't have channel switching? And I was like, well, realistically, it's meant to be a pedal platform amp, and it's meant to be a single channel amp. I just wanted you to be able to get the best of either one of these. It's kind of like a plexi in a way, where both the channels are jumpered already. One of them's like the normal channel. It's a little bit darker, a little less gain, and the other channel is a little bit brighter, and of course has more gain on tap. So basically you kind of dial in what you want. And of course it's a single input. Now, I gotta give the chappers, Mr. Captain, not chappers, did they call him chappers? I can't remember, but the Captain, I know him as the Captain, whatever, you know what I mean. But they did a thing on Anderton's the other day for the Era 30 amp, and they had Dan from That Pedal Show on there. And the Captain was doing everything he could to be as polite and not rude as possible, because Dan was just in his own little world, in his own little smitten space, happy as can be, and he was kind of stuck on the idea of how on earth they got both of those channels to get into the power amp section and, you know, work out the phase issue, right? And you could tell that the captain was really trying to kind of let him know that it is possible, that it's not really an issue in that amp design. There's nothing special going on, but he just couldn't quite get it out. So for those of you who are unaware, if you go back through some of my other videos, we talk a little bit about how a triode stage works. Basically, you've got a positive signal that comes in. So let's back up a little bit. 12AX7 has 2 triodes in it. So there's 2 triodes in one envelope. That's what makes a 12AX7. Well, one triode, you have a positive signal coming in, but the triode inverts that signal. So the output of that triode will be negative. Well, if you cascade it into the other triode, when it comes out, it's going in negative onto that triode. So when it comes out, it will be positive. So that's how you get the phase to flip in a, you know, a tube. That's why they probably put 2 stages or triodes in a single tube. Well, now let's imagine that. So we've gone into one tube, because remember, he uses one tube in parallel, so it's going to come out negative. Well, he's got another 12AX7 in the preamp. One of the triodes is being used as a gain stage, and the other triode in that 12AX7 is being used as a cathode follower. A cathode follower does not invert the polarity. It maintains the polarity that comes out of the previous gain stage. So we have a negative going out, and then we got a negative coming into that next gain stage, the other triode, that then comes out positive and then goes through the cathode follower, which does not invert the polarity. So we have negative going out, positive going out. That's a positive. Well, now we have an EF86 channel like this one does. An EF86 isn't a very special tube in any regard. It does the exact same thing as a triode. You get a positive coming in terms of polarity. The outgoing signal is going to be negative. Well, you've got a positive signal and a negative signal. Now you can inject them into the phase inverter. Let's see if I can get that to point around. There it is. Phase inverter. You can inject that into the phase inverter without phase issues anymore. Easy peasy, right? So that's why it's not an issue. But you're probably looking at my amp going, okay, well, you have an EF86. We see that. And we see that you have a single 12AX7, which you have told us is running in parallel. So how am I dealing with the phase problem if these are both going to be pushing a negative going signal out? There's a lot of money in transformers in this thing, let me tell you. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's inside the amp there. It's a little isolation transformer. It's a 1-to-1 actually. And what I'm using that 4th transformer that's inside of this amp is to do 2 things. One is to isolate the inputs from each other so that these tubes don't have any chance to really crosstalk with each other, right? So the transformer isolates these 2 from each other. The second thing it does is invert the polarity of one of them for me. How convenient is that? So that's how I turn a positive into a negative, etc. Or a negative, excuse me, into a positive in this case. Right? Isn't that great? That's what I've done in this particular amp. So there's a lot of money in transformers in this thing. That Lele transformer that I use to invert the polarity and isolate the inputs costs about as much as either one of these things. It's about $80 for that thing. Pretty pricey. So heavy amp. This thing has the balls, let me tell you what. But it's really cool because it has my standard, you know, input channel or gain clean channel, whatever you want to call it. It's got low cut, volume, and in this particular one with the EF86 channel, I went with low cut and what I'm calling an edge control. You can't see it, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get down that low is just pointless, but edge, it's just like a way to knock off kind of the highest of highs from out of the EF86 channel in its volume, and then a master volume and a high cut, the high cut. So this is a cathode biased amp, so I'm using basically like a Vox cut type control here. And that's how this thing kind of operates. It's basically just a bigger, badder, meaner version of some of my other amps in that regard. Still about only 25, maybe 28 watts or something like that, about the same as this guy here. Because again, I am using slightly lower voltages on most all of my amps. So the output wattage is generally just a little bit lower. You know, if this is a 30 watt amp in the real world, realistically for me, it's probably closer to 28 to maybe 30 at best. This guy here, same. You think, oh, there's two, EL34s in there that are fixed bias. How could it not possibly be putting out 50 watts? It's because I'm not slamming 500 volts on the plates of these things, like some other amp companies might do. I'm running these things at a conservative, I think like right around 400 volts, something like that, maybe a little over 400, but it's pretty conservative. And because of that, it does drop the the wattage down a little bit. And then going with the higher impedance output transformers, that is a thing I kind of believe in, and it's something that, Ken Fisher of Trainwreck Amps did. And I kind of agree with that philosophy. It does do a thing. A higher primary impedance output transformer does tend to widen out the frequency response, and so it has lower lows and a little bit more highs, and it does cause the output section of the amps to break up a little bit sooner. And I do like that because I don't feel that we really need the volume anymore that we used to. We have PA systems that are well, accoutramented these days with digital mixers, nice microphones. Everybody's got SM57s these days. Most of the people that own these systems have kind of gotten a good grasp of how sound works. Audio production these days is a lot better than it was in the 1970s, when pretty much every speaker system out there was literally made in somebody's garage like mine. So we're not in that era anymore. I mean, just what we can do today with audio is amazing. So all that said and done, I know you're probably tired of me yapping away. I'm going to take a little sip here. Some ASMR for you. But in either case, that is what I have been up to. So the last few months, I have not been making videos. I have been working on these guys here, getting them all finished up. We are going to be busy here really soon. I promise you, I am going to be making more content. We are going to hear these things. I need to finish them. They need to get in a box. They need to get what I would consider done. That guy, done. This guy, right freaking there. And then this guy has a little bit more work to do. So I want to thank you so much for sticking with me. We'll see you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.